want to resume the recording. So we have this for the folks who couldn't join us tonight. I am joined by our two facilitators, Cassandra and Colton. And I believe that at least one of my colleagues is here, Betty Olivolo, as well. And we're here to help throughout the session. If you have any questions, you can use the chat. You can also unmute yourself, or you can message me directly. I should be naturalstart-Emily. If you need any support or you're having any tech trouble, just let me know. As we wait for more folks to join the call, and I keep monitoring the waiting room, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize all of you for being here today. We really enjoy being able to host these forums, being able to gather and share ideas. And, you know, while we were preparing for this forum, Cassandra sent me a description, and there was a sentence from the description that really stood out to me that I just wanted to call out. It read, this forum centers thriving in solution-oriented community and healing from isolating silos. And I just really liked the way that they chose to word that. I think that really gets at the heart of why Natural Start and really all professional learning communities at any level exist, to be a place of connection and collaboration. I hope that we've all experienced some healing these past few months, though I know there is a long way to go. Also, if you don't know Liz Climo, great little comics that always make me smile. So I had to throw one of those in there. We are excited for our facilitators, Cassandra and Colton, to share with us tonight and to learn from them. They're going to model sort of an emergent approach to professional development that they call UnPD, and they'll explain what that means to them, and how that kind of breaks the mold of traditional professional development. And honestly, with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to let them have the floor, hand it over to Cassandra and to Colton, who will introduce themselves and get us started. Just a reminder again, for those of you who have just joined really quickly, you are muted, but feel free to unmute yourself to ask questions and to use the chat as much as you need to ask questions as well. All right.
Thanks, Emily, and welcome, welcome. And like Emily was sharing earlier, if you want to turn your video on, you are welcome to. If you do not, or you don't feel comfortable, or you don't want to be recorded, A-okay to not turn that on. But yes, I'm Cassandra Ellis, and Colton, maybe if you want to also introduce yourself, and I can share my screen in a moment.
Yeah, go for it.
Two things at the same time.
Hello, I am Colton Running. Me and Cassandra met way back at the 2019 Natural Start Conference and started kind of riffing on ideas in between conference seminars, and from then to now, we've kind of continued that, working together and checking in with each other on a varying basis depending on what we are working on, and that's kind of what we're going to get into today. A big project I used this approach for was launching my own business, and I am now in the second year of that. So from going to Prescott Summer Institute and then getting paired with her by chance, which was great, turned into from no business to a business with 20 families enrolled in 60 days. So from idea and communication to, okay, great, let's check in next week and talk about this thing. And then, you know, you would go and do the away work and then come back together and bounce ideas around and then kind of go from there. So that's a big part of why I know this works, is because it has been effective even just in starting a business or doing independent projects as well.
Yeah, thanks, Colton. So, so I want to share like a little bit about me. I also want to share a little bit about what you're actually looking at right now on the screen. So I'm going to actually zoom out for a moment. And while I'm doing this little overview, like Emily said in the chat, if you want to put your name and your place where you are right now, and what you're wanting to get out of this experience. Feel free to put that in the chat for us. And I'm also going to put a link in the chat if you want to be able to open up this, it's called a mural board. If you want to be able to open it up yourself and look around, you are more than welcome to do that. We have it as viewing access for you. So don't fret about like touching things, and things shouldn't move around for you. But yeah, feel free to look around. We can see some visiting owl, and everybody has a cute animal name that's chosen for them, which is wonderful. So I am going to kind of give you the overview of this mural board, and then I'll share a little bit more about myself, just so you have a sense of what we're doing here. So we have this who we are, which is where we are right now in our conversation, and what UnPD is. What is this word we're using? We developed what we're calling a process tree for our process of UnPD. And then down here on the bottom left, how and why UnPD works for us. We have project examples. These are we're going to be talking about throughout our conversation. And then we'll be ending with group discussion and then some closing. So this is the overview of our time together. And I'm going to be zooming into, each box as we're going, and so you can actually see the words. So, but again, feel free to use that link to look around you yourself. So, yeah, like Colton was saying, it's kind of feeling a little full circle-ish because we met at the Natural Start Alliance conference. We were co-facilitating a regional networking evening together because we live in the same area in the Pacific Northwest. And then we just like kept working together. And like Colton said, we met at the Prescott College, or we worked together again at the Prescott College Nature and Place-Based Early Childhood Education Summer Institute. Very long and deep word, deep phrase about it. And the Summer Institute, if you don't know about it, I'd highly recommend checking out the Prescott College Summer Institute. It is wonderful in its unique offering. And yeah, and then we came up with the UnPD approach through all of this work together. And I'm going to be sharing more about the projects, my business projects. But one of the main focuses of my work is on an email newsletter that I send out on a weekly basis. I used to send it out more often. And through that process, UnPD has been really helpful to me. Colton and I work together in a newsletter support group, and I think our other member is also present.
She's here.
Yeah, she's somewhere there.
I
I can't see video, but so yeah, we have a newsletter support group, and the name of it kind of says all that it's about, just supporting one another in our newsletters. And again, finding a way that really works for all of us for how we want to do our work together, and not thinking that there is one way of doing professional development. That's really what we're riffing on today, is like, there is not one way of doing things. This is like your permission to find a way that works for you. So if you need that permission, I am giving that to you right now. Not that you need my permission, but I notice sometimes getting that from other people is really helpful. So yeah, if you haven't already, feel free to intro yourself in the chat.
Can I quick interrupt, Cassandra, and also sorry for not properly pronouncing your name the first time around. There are a couple folks who said they're having some trouble accessing. You're using the link. I can see clearly that there are some people in there, but other folks who are having trouble. So I don't know if there's another way for you to share it.
Yeah, if maybe folks want to tell, like, you're welcome to go off the chat and share why you're not being able to access it. That would be, unless you're sharing that in the chat. I just don't have it open right now.
I wonder if it's using a phone rather than a computer, or using not a different or uncommon browser, but
Yeah, that's a good call, Emily. I think I'm using Google Chrome right now, so I find that Mural works really well with that. And I would just say kind of close out and maybe just start again. And yeah, if you are on your phone with Zoom and Mural, it might not really like you very much. So just hang out with the screen share and then maybe it'll work after our time together. But yeah, this is accessible to you after we're together too. And we aren't going to be asking you to like be inputting anything into this. So it's not a necessity for you to be able to open it up on your end. So I don't want you missing out, but hopefully you're not, because you get to see it on the screen share. So thanks, Emily.
yeah, thank you for that. And I'll just follow up by saying we can include the link in a follow-up email. So.
Oh, excellent.
Totally. Yeah, thanks. So this is kind of just an overview of what we have, how we're framing UnPD. And again, if it's not clear, UnPD is unprofessional development. And you can take that as meaning unprofessional, or you can take that as meaning unprofessional development altogether. If you know about the movements of unlearning and unschooling, really this is kind of detangling a lot of the traditional hierarchical structures that exist in school and in learning a lot of the time, in teaching and in professional development. So we are offering different ways that are not linear, are not hierarchical, and this is kind of our answer to that. So I'll pass it off to you, Colton.
Yeah, I mean, we found that not following the traditional, I'm going to do development, and if I do this process of step 1 through 5, then I will be successful. And we kept coming back to, well, this forum started because we wanted to present it as part of the conference. And then we were talking about, how do we even explain what we do? We meet and we talk about stuff, but we're developing professionally. We're also completing tasks. We're growing a community. We're completing all these things without going down like the traditional, pay the large sum of money, attend the conference, do the thing, and then you leave and you don't have support anymore. And you feel not without a task, but without community around driving forward and completing these things. So we broke it out into these cards here saying self-determined and interest-based is, I chose to work on this thing and it's something that I'm interested in. So then we work towards that. And the open-ended time frame is, it might be that I need to start a business in the next 2 months because that's when school starts. Great. I'm starting to build a more complete picture of what's going on. And then by adding the other 2 things, you get to have that community and goal-oriented side of things as well.
Thanks, Colton. I must admit, I was looking at the chat and seeing everybody's
There's
really
all kinds of good stuff in there.
Awesome words about like really just wanting inspiration. And I feel like that's been such a big part of our conversations between Colton and me about like really wanting to like reinvigorate our learning, because I don't know about all of you here, but like, I know I got into being an educator, being a teacher, being in various sorts of learning environments because I love learning myself, because I'm fascinated and always curious about learning. And so I do hope that this is kind of offers that inspiration that you might be needing with your professional development. So, so Colton, you went over working with dynamic community,
And
progress-oriented projects and goals. Which ones have you not gone over?
I did the left 2.
Okay, thanks. Wait, the left 2?
Self-determined and open-ended time frame.
Okay, great, thanks. So, okay, hopping over to the right, working with dynamic community. We find that this one is not a necessity. I feel like UnPD can be something you do solely on your own. And yet the nature of being with other people who have different skills, different talents, different gifts than you do, is what makes this such a rich environment for us. And so that dynamic nature, I guess, about just working with people who bring in different experiences and different experiences professionally, personally, really adds to the learning. And because, like, you know, again, with this approach, there isn't just one teacher, there isn't one facilitator offering this. Everybody is offering all that they want to offer. And so we really get to reap the benefits of having diversity in all its forms. So, and then progress-oriented projects or goals, this is kind of speaking to that this isn't just like, it's not just a chit chat group. It's not just, I can't get this term out of my mind, but like a coffee clutch group. I've never attended a coffee clutch group, but it's like, it's not like a time to connect just socially. It is that, and it's so much more. And so having some progress, some forward momentum is really valuable. And we're not saying that this progress is determined by anyone but you. This is really, you are wanting to see forward movement for yourself. And that might be taking you down, you know, a left turn or right turn, but still you're not just going around in circles, or you're not stalling. Really, there's that movement. So what we have at the end of here, we have, so do you facilitate child-led or project-based learning? UnPD is an adult version of this. So this is really another, our response to, you know, we're in communities with young children, with families, we're offering this child-led experience. Why are we not doing that for ourselves too? And this is really how we can do this for ourselves. So, and then also the other question we have here, do you see a gap between traditional PD and all that you want to do? UnPD is our answer to that gap.
I have one more thing about the progress oriented and it not being like just there as a community to chat with, but it's like, it doesn't matter if you made progress or not, you know that you're working towards something in the long term, or it may be short term because that is determined by what you said as a timeline. But if you're able to communicate, hey, I tried to write 3 newsletters this week, but really I'm more comfortable writing like 1.5 or 2. Great. Like you made progress. You acknowledge that you're working towards something, and it's nobody's like keeping tally on this person did their job and this person completed this task and the progress is exponential. It's more of like coming back to reflect and say, hey, this was hard. Has anybody else run into that? And that's another benefit of working with diverse backgrounds is our first newsletter group was us and several other people. And one of them did marketing as an occupation in the past. And it's like to hear their input and their approach to things greatly benefited us, but they were there for the community, which we could provide. So it is very give and take, but also the progress can be small steps and it doesn't matter as long as there's that continuing growth. And I guess it's more of growth than progress than anything.
Yeah, definitely. All right. All right, Colton. I'm going to zoom in to one, wherever we want to start. Which one?
We can do the timeline. I guess I can start with that. I have kind of talked about that previously with the work, starting the business. The tree that we created, it took a long time to get it down to just 4 things because it's a web. It is a mess, but that's the fun of it is you get to choose like, I'm going to add an additional criteria. We know that you have to figure out the time and the frequency, and does it align with what you want to be working on, and then the community. So those are the 4 main ones. But time specifically is the project timeline. Do I have it? Do I want to set a timeline? Do I want to leave it open-ended? And then also the balance of like time committed to actively work. Okay, let's say we're going to do a project over the next 90 days. How many of those days am I going to spend working? And of those days, how much time do I commit every day, or is it X amount of hours? So try and determine that when you start, and then as you work into it, that will shift. And that, leads into the frequency of how many times, like how frequently do you want to do the work? Do you want to do it once a week? Do you want to, you set an allotted time, or what you are guessing is the time it will take. And it may be the first time you do it, it takes 4 hours to write something. And then you learn, okay, great, I can do that in 2. So now you're adjusting the time and the frequency together, and then moving that into working with the group.
So, and using one of our projects as an example with the newsletter support group, we originally, I had this question of frequency as well as time, and I really decided, not just on my own, in conversation with Colton about that doing it as a seasonal project, so about 3 months, was a good span for the group, and then meeting every other week, because we noticed that, we have a lot of other stuff we're doing in our lives, personally, professionally. And so meeting every week, meeting every day, that's not going to be sustainable for us with our email newsletters. And so every other week was a frequency that worked for us originally, and actually still does. We still do this every other week. We took a break over the summer too. I knew that I wasn't going to be putting a lot of personal energy into my email newsletter at that point, and checked in with the other members, and it was the same for them as well. And so we took a break from it too. So giving us that flexibility was really valuable. So in terms of the group, we do want there to be a balance of having commonality and then also diversity. And those common threads, again, using the newsletter support group, I found this out with the first one, that there were some members that it wasn't as similar as we originally thought with like what we actually meant by an email newsletter, because there's so many different ways to send an email. There's so many different topics. There's so many different tools to use to send an email. And so we wanted there to be enough commonality, enough common ground that we could be having conversations together and problem solving, and actually being able to successfully support one another. And we had one person leave, right away from the group because she realized it just wasn't enough of a commonality for her. Yes, she did want to start an email newsletter for marketing for her business, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't a fit, which is totally fine. And then again, diversity, we want there to be differences. We want, my newsletter is mainly essay based and sending out kind of more long form shares through the written word. And that's not Colton's cup of tea. That's not something that he
not at all
that he likes.
Which was fun to see that. Like through time, we discovered I don't want to write a newsletter, but I'm still sending it via email. So we're still going to put it under that newsletter dome, but I'm doing more of like content creation. I'm going to go out and, teach families how to use like weather radar to plan their day hikes and see, do you really need to pack rain gear or not? Which, I could write a big long thing about it, but I'm looking more at like content creation and shared via email. So it's still a newsletter. We're still facing the same issues of subscribers and frequency and those things, but the approach is completely different, which then, we have an impact on each other, which has been totally beneficial for both, for all three of us involved in the last couple.
Yeah, yeah. And if this isn't clear already too, we have our process tree is kind of like a template. So we have these blank ones at the end of each branch for, you know, for you to fill in, is kind of the idea, that it's like, what is your response to kind of this question, kind of either or. So lastly, we have alignment, and this one took us a while to come up with, like, what is the actual word that we're going for? I think in a way all of them are incredibly valuable to what we mean by UnPD, but like alignment is something that I think gets to the heart of it, is that we want everybody who's a part of the group, everybody who's a part of the process is invested in it. And so their values, their personal goals, they align with the group's goals and values. And that's not always the case with traditional PD. You just show up and you take the class, and maybe you learn, maybe you don't. But what I've realized personally for myself as a learner, as well as with the children that I've worked with over many years, as well as adults, it's like you learn so much more if you have that alignment. And if you don't, there's so many hurdles to jump over to be able to actually learn what you're wanting to learn. And so having this willingness to keep going, to keep moving onward at whatever your pace is really where that alignment comes from. And then also the alignment with actually the project. Is this project wanting to grow? Is it wanting to expand? Or is it maybe coming to a close? Or is it maybe just it's not getting the nutrients it needs in this form? Maybe it needs a different form. So UnPD isn't an answer to everything. Some projects might not work for this approach, and that's okay. Maybe it needs to be in a different kind of setup. So having that question of, is my project growing how it wants to grow, as well as how I want it to grow? And continually asking those, self-reflective questions is really valuable. So we're going to jump down to how and why it works down here.
These are the two big, it's so messy, but in the best way of trying to explain this. We made a board like this prior to creating this one, and it had about 8 times as much stuff on it, because we would just write out what we were thinking and how it connected, and then kind of brought that down and refined it. So we even used this approach in approaching the approach to make this. So it was like 3 layers deep of like, let's meet about it. Great. Let's talk about it. Cool. Let's check in next week. Okay. Let's make a thing. Great. And then take that and refine it into this. And a little bit of it is the working together, which is on the right, and then the working independently. So we would come together and talk and figure out what we're talking about. How are we even going to share this? It's not going to work in a slide deck. So we said, let's try this. So we would go and work independently, and we would think about, what are the important things and how are we going to share that and those things, and then we would come back together and we would communicate about it. And that's what all the things on the left and the right are broken up to do. And then in the middle is like the timeline, the frequency that we had talked about. Is at the beginning of the project, that line down the center is the project, and then the squiggle is how frequently you come back together. So when you start, you may meet once a week, which is how we started. I think one of the newsletter or pre-newsletter groups was we would meet once a week, and we're like, this is too much. So then we changed it to every other week. And then now we'll meet about like long-term projects every couple of months. So it may be once a quarter, it may be once a year, and just check back in. And that frequency shifts as the project gains momentum, and or you're able to, answer more of the questions on your own. So the away work is putting in the work, spending the time, doing the thing, and then the working together is the community side.
Yeah, so I'm also thinking about another example of when Colton and I were working together through the Prescott College Summer Institute. And in our mentoring group, I was served as the mentor, and then Colton and about 4 or 5 others served as the mentees. And we decided that we wanted to come together on a seasonal basis to share about the projects everybody was working on. And so that was determined by us as a group. And that cadence worked for some people and didn't work for other people. Other people wanted to communicate with me individually. And so having that, again, like looking through kind of a lens of adaptability and flexibility on being able to meet people where they're at and actually meet their needs. And so Colton and I were, meeting seasonally for that. And then for other projects, we were meeting more frequently because that's what the projects necessitated. So I also want to show you the working together. So it's like Colton is saying, like these arrows are not, they're kind of unintentional in how they're connecting, because as I'm sure a lot of people here realize, working together is messy. And there's all of these things that are happening simultaneously. There's constructive feedback that's occurring. There's developing the ability to ask for support. That is a skill that is really valuable to learn, how to actually ask for help from others. There's seeking out people who have skills and gifts that you don't have. There's increasing your failure tolerance. Not everything's going to work. And that is not only okay, that's good. We don't want everything to succeed.
It's the best.
Exactly.
That's how you learn. It blows up in your face and you come back to the community and say, hey, did anybody else run into this? And they go, oh, forgot to tell you about that. And you're like, lesson learned. Great. How did you approach that? And you move on and you're gaining ground, but it's a drag at the time, but you have support, you have your people to bounce that off of.
And I'm noticing actually there's an arrow between, there's actually, like, if you see between increased failure tolerance and share past experience to benefit all, there are arrows going straight back and forth between those, because that is, Colton's failure. Not only is he going to learn from it, I'm going to learn from it too. And so the more richness we share about our past experiences, the more that it benefits everybody, which is really wonderful. So, and like Colton had said, the inner work is often done during the meetings. And what we mean by inner work is like the personal work, the skill-based work of like, what's going on kind of underneath the work, what's going on, there's probably a reason that I haven't sent out my newsletter for the past 3 weeks. It might not just be that I haven't had the time, in quotes, it might be that there's something that needs to change about my process. Let's get into that when we're together, so that, when I'm solo, when I'm working independently, I'm able to move forward with this, like what we're calling the outer work, the project or task work that is me actually typing the newsletter out and clicking publish. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't get into that inner sticky work of like, why is this not happening? And maybe I'm kind of making excuses for myself about this is, why this isn't happening.
I think that excuse thing, once you are accountable to someone else, like our newsletter group, tell you what, I did not want to write a newsletter for anything, but I knew that once I committed and you guys put me on the spot and said, okay, let's make an agreement. I'm going to write one in the next week. And I said, I'm going to write one in the next month. And to see you guys like commit and do the work made me want to actually stop what I'm doing, quit with the bogus, and just sit and do the work. And then come back and be like, hey, it's hard. Where do you even start with this? And then once you get it done, you go, okay, that wasn't so bad. And then you look back at the frequency and time. You're like, great, the first one took me actually 4 hours. But now I'm down to an hour, hour and a half tops because I have a system. And the frequency is I work on it less frequently because it takes less time. So rather than spending 2 4-hour blocks, it's 1 hour and a half block, and I get the same amount of work done. But you don't start to see those shifts until you put in the work, which is hard. It's hard to do the work, and that's okay. But if it's hard, then it's worth doing. Because if it's easy, then why are we doing it? Which, is very deep, but it's true. Like if you're not motivated or you're not being challenged, you're not really developing, which is the whole point of this unprofessional development, is to grow a project or grow your skills or grow your knowledge. You can apply this to taking a university course or starting a business or putting in an effort to do a newsletter group like we've been doing. And you can apply it to so many different things, but you have to do the work when you're away from the group because nobody's going to do that work for you. It's like committing to go to the Natural Start Conference. It sounds really good, but once you commit and you're going, the end result will be beneficial. Yeah, it's not great to get on the plane. Yeah, nobody wants to go across the country. Great. But once you're there, that experience is totally worthwhile. You grow the community, you grow as a person, and then you reflect on it and you go back and do it again. So that frequency is once a year. And now if you start to compare it to things like that, you can get down to the week by week, which we're doing for the newsletter group. But big picture is Natural Start, I'm sure, uses something similar to this all the time.
We wanted to come up with a kind way of saying, if the work isn't actually happening, then the work isn't happening and you can't figure out what's next. And so what we wrote is, by taking action, you learn what actions must be taken next. And so between, being iterative and having that continual cycle of moving through a work project, a work like subtask, and then seeing how it went, that experiential quality to it equals by taking action, you learn what actions must be taken next. And so this is how this work unfolds for you. You've never done this work before. You've never done this project before. Maybe you've done something similar, but this iteration of it, you've never done it. So the only way to learn how to do it is actually by doing it. And I just wanted to make sure we point out that we also have a little box that says this isn't an answer for everything. This approach works better for more, quote, gray area projects rather than, quote, black and white projects, like things that, we've been talking about bookkeeping for a business, and like bookkeeping, has very black and white answers, very yes and no. Either you've sent the thing in or you haven't sent the thing in. These projects that we're talking about are much more of those gray projects that have a lot of creativity and individuality to them. So this is kind of what we're speaking to. I did also see a question, and I think it was from Emily, that I definitely want to make sure we get to when we get to our group discussion.
I think we're almost there. There are so many examples of using this, starting a business, continuing to run a business. Your newsletters has continued from over a year ago. We did the first group, and that those groups each time have shifted. But our projects, you can point to short-term, easy wins of like, I did this thing and I used this approach and it worked, to the long-term of 2 years into a business and still using this to like brainstorm new programs I'd like to offer, or like, how can we alter the newsletter support group? You're like you're saying, the bookkeeper, you can't use this to like, how do I open a bank account for my business? It's like, great. But you can, if you're starting the business, you can come back in community and say, who has had this experience with this bank? Like, you can still use that side, but the work of going in and setting up the business bank account, you have to do independently. There's nobody's going to do it for you. So you can use it for some of those black and white things to communicate with your group, your support or your one person, however you may determine to do it. But like you were saying, there is nobody that's going to do the black and white stuff because it's yes or no's, and you just have to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and now as we've been talking to, I'm actually thinking of other past projects that are coming to me, but these are really the ones we've been speaking about right now. And, you know, under past projects, we have newsletter support group number 1 and 2, like our first and second iterations of those. And then Colton starting Natural Learning Northwest, his business. And so your business started, you know, I mean, the idea of it, and
we were talking about it in New Hampshire.
It started in New Hampshire, yeah, but for you, obviously before too. But then that was Natural Learning Northwest was your project that you were going to work on within the Prescott College Summer Institute. And so that project, you know, is now a full-fledged business. And now, you know, under ongoing and current projects, you're doing the everyday running of the small business that you're running. And we also have the newsletter support group, you know, this iteration right now. And then, you know, the Be With Cassandra newsletter that I've been talking about. And then the Be With Cassandra podcast, which has had a lot of those. I have definitely increased my failure tolerance with the podcast. I'll put it that way. But it's still an ongoing and current project of mine.
And I think talking about the iterative and experiential, like we were joking that the newsletter support group is no longer just newsletters. It's communication. It's podcast. It's content creation. It's writing a newsletter. It's all of these things, but we already have our group of people who are willing to show up and talk about it. So like, why not add one more? And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, then we'll try it again for the next run. But I think being open to that flexibility and not being stuck in the rigid professional development, you know, do the list 1 through 10 and move to the next step. It doesn't work like that. That's not real life. That's more of the black and white step, goal-oriented stuff, where what we're talking about is more open-ended, long-term or short-term projects that you're actually motivated to put effort into, because nobody wants to sit there and fill out paperwork. It's just nobody does. So we want to do the fun stuff and use this approach to do that. And when it comes to the paperwork, great, we can sit and do that and then come back and be in community and talk about that was a drag. How can I prevent that? And then people will guide you around having to do those steps.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're at the point we wanted to leave their enough time, more than enough time for actually discussing all of this with you. And so whether you have general questions about anything we've been talking about, or you have like a specific project that you want to share as an example, or we can kind of, you know, riff on like how to apply this approach to any project or task. So anything you're coming into the group with. I'm also going to scroll over here because Colton, I'm changing things up. I hope you're okay with that.
Switch it up. That's what we're here for.
I wanted to just show kind of our links, how to get in touch with us, because I'd really love to actually stop sharing the screen so that I can see more of your faces. Is really, it's more of a personal thing for our questions. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with us, we have our emails here. In the Mural Board, these are actually like live links to our websites, to Colton's at naturallearningnorthwest.com and my email or my website, bewithcassandra.com. We have our email addresses. Please feel free to reach out with any questions. If you want to subscribe to my newsletter that I've been talking so much about, you're welcome to subscribe just at the website. So, and we have our question, who wants to start a group? So I am going to close the screen. I'll put our links also in the chat too, but I'm going to open the floor for questions. If you want to put them in the chat or go off mute, you're welcome to do either.
I would like to just kind of add something. When you said who wants to start a group, I was trying to kind of pay attention to what people said they were looking for early on. And I saw some people who were trying to start a business or trying to start a school. And so there are certainly some themes that started to emerge. And there are plenty of ways to connect with people, but being that this is a Natural Start Alliance forum, I thought I would make sure that you were all aware that we have a Natural Start Google group that has over 1,000 members. It's fairly active. Hope that you are all a part of it. If you're not a part of it, I will share a link to join it. Everyone is welcome. And we have actually had sort of mini groups form out of that larger group of people who are really interested in a similar topic and want to set up a Zoom call to meet. So we don't want that to be a barrier. You know, if you're looking for people who are trying to work on the same thing, put it out there in the Google group, and you will most likely find people who are thinking about the same thing, trying to do the same thing. So just putting that out there, that's a good place to find other people, because there's people from all over the country who are a part of that group. That's my little plug.
Yeah, Emily, thank you so much. And I think that what I've noticed over, you know, this past like pandemic years, however long it's been, like, it's been really wonderful to have specific places to go on the internet that are like, where are people who are kind of doing similar things to me? Where are people I can learn from, learn with? And so knowing that the Google group is like, there are people, it's an active group, is really wonderful to hear too, Emily, because sometimes you happen upon something on, you know, some group on the internet that's like nobody's there, and you put out this question into the, you know, the ether, and you don't get anything back. So that's really wonderful that is a spot. So yeah, questions, thoughts. I'm going to kind of scroll through the chat and make sure that I know that I have missed stuff. So, but feel free to chime in, anyone.
May I chime in?
Please.
I just want to just briefly share my experience working with Colton and Cassandra in the newsletter support group. I have 800,000 things on my plate, not an exaggeration. And when I was first presented with the idea, my initial thought was, I absolutely do not have time to get together for an hour and a half or 2 hours. I'm like, I need to spend my time actually producing and doing a thing. But I love these two people. And so I said, I'm going to go in with an open mind and I'm going to see what happens here. And I cannot express in enough ways how much I have gotten out of these UnPD sessions where we do all of the things that they just described. It's incredible. It's really, yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I just wanted to express that I had reservations, that I did it anyway, and that I have gotten so much out of it.
Thanks, Nicole. Emily, you had asked, like, how do you make time for this collaboration, and do you check in with each other to keep each other on track, or is there an ebb and flow? And it's like, you just got to put in the time. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to watch a movie tonight. I'm going to go work on my thing. And it's so easy to just like, no, that's not convenient. And it's like, you have to make time for it. But if you determine that ahead of time, saying, here's my project, and you use the tree and you say, I'm going to put in 2 hours a week. That's 30 minutes a day, Monday through Thursday. Like, it's not hard to carve out half an hour, but it's not easy to sit and do 2-hour block when the rest of life is happening around you. So I found that if I break it up and I do little bits at a time, especially like the newsletter stuff, I put out a newsletter every month, and I'm like, okay, Halloween's coming up. It's the end of the month. I need to get this done. So last night I worked on it for 20 minutes. I worked on it for another 40 minutes today. I put in an hour of work between yesterday and today, and I'm almost done, rather than sitting down and going, okay, I have 60 minutes to sit and get this project done, because it doesn't work that way. That's not how completing task works for me. But other times it's like, I don't have a choice. I have to do it this way. And then you resent it and then you won't want to do it again. So if you can find a system of allowing yourself time to work on it, like piecemeal, break the big problem down into accomplishable steps, that has been very successful for me, especially with writing, which I am not a writer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I will just share, as you were talking after I typed that question in the chat. So the real example that I have to share is there was this wonderful virtual conference group that I was a part of that Lori Mann, who is the conference manager for NAAE, kind of organized and set up, and she's a superhero. And it was maybe once a month we were meeting, and I found it so incredibly valuable to have people like there to just like chat through what we were all thinking about. And there was never a question of how valuable it was, but I found as we were getting closer to our own conference, I was like, I can't go to that. Like, I can't spare 1 hour. I have to do all the other things on my to-do list, right? But as you were talking, I was just thinking it's kind of that asking for help piece that I should have just like told Lori, like, hey, don't let me not show up. You know, like I said, I'm not going to come today, but just send me an email and be like, can you really not come today? Because sometimes you really can't make the time, but there are other times when you're just kind of making an excuse for yourself. Well, what might be appropriate for someone else is to just say like, hey, actually, I don't need you to check in on me. I'm just going to show up sometimes and I'm not going to show up other times. Where for me, like, I actually think I should ask and say, check in on me and make sure I'm showing up. It's not necessarily her responsibility, right? But if you're asking for it, especially as someone that you can count on, that, I don't know, I think that might work for me. So I kind of realized that as you were talking. So I thought I'd share.
Yeah, it's really great to hear your process, Emily, right now, because it is this, it's kind of it's like pulling the weeds back and like all the like overgrowth and being able to see what is actually going on. And also what actually do I need? I see Patricia asked, and I also see a hand raise. I see you. Patricia was talking about, you know, that asking for help is new territory for Patricia, and it's a big new terrain, new territory for a lot of us. And I think that getting more specific about what are you actually asking for help? Like, okay, Emily's like, I want to ask for somebody to just send me a little note saying, hey, see you tomorrow. And that is a really specific thing. If we go to people and we're just like, I need help with this. What do you need? I don't know how to meet you halfway. And so I think doing that inner work, that internal work of like, what do you actually need help with? And what is yours to just do on your own? And that's different for every single person. So it really is, we can't, you know, show you a spreadsheet of like what you can ask for help with and what you can't ask for help with. It doesn't really work like that. I'm not seeing your Diamond. Am I saying your name right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Cassandra, for having a windstorm on the East Coast. So hopefully my internet is stable. But I am an environmental educator. I was invited to this through NAAE. I'm one of the 30 under 30 educators this year. And I am reimagining how I can show up as an environmental educator that's aligned with who I am. And one of the ways that I have found to do that is through content creation on Instagram. And I started making a lot of videos during the pandemic geared at, you know, sharing how you can engage with nature while we're all at home. And I'm looking to step it up a level and start a YouTube channel and eventually have a web series. And just wondering how this process, this group might be helpful.
That's awesome.
I'm like super excited listening to what you're talking about. Go ahead,
I mean, I want to be part of your group. I think if you're looking at like, what is the challenge, right? Where do you need help? Do you need help with the video production? Do you need help with like the timing? Find the people that are able to answer those questions and say, hey, can I talk to you just like once a month for an hour? And they'll give you input, and then you take that input and you apply that. And then you come back the next month and you're like, well, that blew up in my face. This didn't work, or this worked, or this. Actually, I want to kind of take what you said and I want to shift it. Do you know anybody that has that piece? And you start to build this web of people, of community, and then you can formalize it, I guess, for how informal our approach is, to say, hey, look, here's our group. We're going to meet every other week for 3 months. And if that works, it works. And if it doesn't, great. But now you've met this network of people who you can now kind of pick and choose who to work with. Like an example today, I had a meeting with some guy doing some graphic design work with me, and talking about having branded merchandise made. He's like, oh, you don't know about this enamel mug company out of Poland? I'm like, how would I ever know about that unless I bring it up and someone has input? And then you take that and you run with it. And it might cost a fortune and I'll never afford it. But all it takes is asking the question to get input to then kind of lead you further down the path.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm unsure about is these groups, are they curated people that I like pick and then have them all meet together on some agreed upon schedule? Or is this like, I know I'm going to speak to this person, in these intervals during this project?
I think you could do it either way. I think
Okay.
if it's beneficial to everyone, do it as a group. If it's beneficial to just you and it's only serving you, you could set up a timetable to communicate with them. But I think doing it as a group is always going to be more beneficial, because everybody is committed at that point. And that's why we were talking about the commonalities. I'm not a writer, but I want to be able to communicate. So Nicole and Cassandra both can write very well, but I want to learn that skill. So I'm working with them, but I have the, image and photo video side. So it's like everybody benefits for a common goal, but it's not necessary to have it be exclusively beneficial to everyone. Like some people come in and then they bow out right away, like what Cassandra was saying, because it didn't align with what they wanted. And that's fine. And the core group that stays is now who you get to work with.
Got it.
Yeah, well, I think that we probably could have another box like area for like, is it, if you're doing your UnPD works independently fully, and then like you're saying, kind of bringing people in for more questions and more one-off basis, or do you have this like sustainable group that keeps going? And I would agree with Colton that sustainable group, that core group that is able to keep going, like of finding other people who've already started YouTube channels, who also are interested in starting YouTube channels, or maybe who have podcasts that they're doing. I mean, now I'm like, I want to like have another group that's like podcasts and YouTube channels. But like, I'm like losing my train of thought because I'm super excited, but there's so much value, like Colton's saying. I'm just going to repeat what you're saying basically in my own words. Like when everybody has their own project that they are coming to the table with, I have noticed that more happens in the group. It's like, if I'm just going to somebody for a question, then it's not evenly balanced. But it's like when everybody's bringing, oh, I have this newsletter I'm working on, oh, I have this YouTube channel, everybody's investment is so much higher because everybody wants to be able to pull something out. And so everybody's going to put more in, is how I've experienced it. So I would say go for the group. If hopefully we're bringing more clarity, dear.
Yes.
Question. Cool.
I'm wondering, just kind of to build on that, sorry if I'm taking up too much time, this is so interesting and that a lot of thoughts. So you two talked about how you met both at the Natural Start Conference, and then also through Prescott, and then you also are in the same area. So that evolved sort of naturally. But for a jumping off point, I mean, I mentioned the Google groups, but other places that you have found or other ways that you have been able to sort of connect with people who have similar goals, or that alignment that you were talking about?
Yeah, I definitely have noticed I have intentionally been joining like online classes, online experiences that are bringing people together who I'm like, I want to like, how do I describe it? Like, I guess I really love networking. And what I mean by networking is I just love meeting new people. And so I'm like, where can I meet people who might have, you know, this similar interest, but might be doing it in their own way. And so I'm in a variety of different classes that like, you wouldn't think I would meet anybody who would connect with me, but I end up meeting like at least one or two people. And so I have this like pathway that I've taken of like, you know, each experience, each conference, each class I attend, like there's like one or two people who I really become close with. And, you know, these are classes of like 500 people sometimes. And it's just like, I connect with one person, and that person is somebody who, you know, this person and I have like a red thread where we just like keep running into each other, like Colton and I did. So I would definitely recommend to just either in person or virtually, just like try attending, showing up to things that you're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to meet somebody, but I'm really curious about this, and maybe I do. And then I follow up with the people, like with that person, that one person who I was like, oh, that they said something really cool. I want to follow up with them. And I think that's really the crux of it, is just like following up and just keeping connected. Like Colton and I, we very easily could have been like, you know, the person you just meet at a conference and you just see at a conference every year. But because we both were like, oh, I want to follow up with that person. Like they're like weird in a really good way. Speaking about myself, not you, but like, there's something about that person that it's like, it clicks for us. Like we professionally have so many, you know, overlaps where it's like, we can do various projects together. So I would definitely recommend, to just repeat myself again, I would definitely recommend to follow up with the people who are interesting to you and keep following up with them. Because you never know where it'll lead.
I think talking about like pointing it back to like working with children is like, it's interest led. Go take a class on something you're interested in, you know nothing about. Go, you're going to meet someone who's interesting, who may or may not have more experience than you. And you may or may not befriend them, and you may or may not build this thing that can lead to like what we're doing. But it's like being a kid again. We're like, I don't know anything about anything. I'm just going to go try. Do I like this? Great. Is there people that I like to be around? Even better. And you build those friendships that way. And then you can turn it into work, if this is what you can call work. I don't ever feel like I'm working when we meet, because we're sitting and having a conversation and meeting each other where we are as people, not as you're doing your work and I'm doing my work, and they're very disconnected, but coming together and having that be the work is being together and gaining ground on whatever it is we're working on independently.
Yeah, so please, I mean, and maybe this is a good spot to come to a close, but please use this experience of coming together to like, I'm noticing like people are saying like, I'm looking for this, like in the chat, like use this as an opportunity to connect with people who are obviously looking for similar things because they said yes to showing up to this, right? Like, like by saying yes to being here, seeking out alternative approaches to learning, you already know that this person is kind of checks a box off of like, oh, they kind of want to do things a little differently, just like I do. So connect, please. And then like 3 years from now, you can be like, I met this person at this thing, and we've done all these great things together. So yeah, I have a million other things I could say, but I'm gonna cut myself off in a kind way, and I'll pass it back to you, Emily, unless Colton wants to say something.
I'm square.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I love what you said, Cassandra, and I am seeing it happen in the chat here. And I'm going to be doing some more thinking, and I think the National Start team will continue to do more thinking about how, if there's any way that we can, help support this or facilitate these connections. That's what we're here for. So if you're looking for something, you can always reach out to us, and it's our job, to know a lot of people and what's going on. So we might be able to connect you with someone. So always reach out, use that Google group, which I put in the chat, but I will also put in the follow-up email that we send along with the link to the wonderful resource here that Colton and Cassandra have created. And also just a quick note, we weren't able to have our conference in person the last 2 years. Colton and Cassandra met in 2019, which was our last in-person conference. But there have been some cool benefits to being online the last 2 years. We've had a huge audience. And so if you haven't registered for the 2021 conference and you're interested, and you can check out that platform. And something we added this year from last year was this people page, where you could connect with, you could find, sort by location of where other conference attendees are. So you might find some folks who are working in your area, or a presenter that presented on a topic that might kind of hit one of these things for you that you're trying to work on, and you can connect with them. So I'd encourage you to check that out, just as another resource, another way to kind of check in with people. But this was all recorded. We'll send it out after. We'll send this resource. We'll send a follow-up email. And we try to have these every month. So aside from the summer when the conference is taking up a lot of our time. But oh yeah, and I see Amy has posted another great resource, is Inside Outside, in the chat. So there it is. This was great. I want to really take a moment to thank our facilitators here. I think it was a really wonderful discussion, clearly, because I just kept talking because I thought it was so interesting. But thank you both. Thank you to everyone who came, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.